Hey everybody, welcome back to Better Workdays. I am your host, Andy Morrison from Real Custom Training. And on this week's episode, I want to look at how leaders fail even when they succeed. Isn't that an encouraging thought as a supervisor or manager out there? You could be failing even though you're getting the results you need to get. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it can happen. You can help make sure it doesn't happen by listening to this episode of Better Workdays. And as always on the show, I wish I was smart enough to come up with this stuff, but I'm simply not. This guy is, though. Here he is, Dr. Paul Hersey, his book, The Situational Leader. That's who I'm stealing from this week. When I went to film school, they taught us, don't borrow, steal. In the film context, it means you watch a movie, you see a shot you love. Don't borrow it. Don't try to make it your own. Just straight up steal it. Find out how they did it and then go do it the same exact way. Same thing in leadership development. I'm not going to try to make this model my own. It's Dr. Paul Hersey's model. I'm going to steal it from him, but at least I have the integrity to acknowledge who I'm stealing from. Okay. So Dr. Paul Hersey, and I strongly recommend that book. I read a lot of books, some better than others. This is one of the ones that is much better than others. Now, here's the model. Here's how to make sure you are not failing even when you succeed as a leader. All right. In this model, let me paint a picture for those of you who are listening and not watching this podcast. You've got your leader. They need to exert influence over a follower. And that's leadership in a nutshell, folks. It's intentional leadership. It's intentional influence, okay? The leader needs to influence the follower. Why? Because there is some resultant behavior that they want to get or they need to get out of that follower. That resultant behavior will either be successful or unsuccessful. Most of us stop there when we consider leadership and what we're looking to get out of our employees. We're going to influence them because there's something we need them to do. They're either going to do that thing or not do that thing. Or perhaps they do the thing, but then we're going to get into questions of quality. So there can be a scale between successful and unsuccessful. But for the most part, did they do it or did they not do it? And that's where a lot of leaders get hung up. Did they do it or did they not do it? I'm here to make sure that they did the thing they need to do. The rub is that can still lead to failure. And here's how. In his book, Hersey uses this model to take a look at why micromanaging is an ineffective leadership practice. So, in the micromanaging context, let's say the leader needs to influence the follower to build 10 widgets that day. That's the resultant behavior they're looking for. Remember, we've talked about this. Leaders need to always be asking themselves, what's the result I'm trying to get here? In this case, the result is I need this employee to build these 10 widgets by the end of the day. So, the leader in this scenario, let's say they achieve that by micromanaging that employee. They basically hold their hand the whole time. They basically walk them through it. Essentially, yes, the 10 widgets get built. It is a successful resultant behavior. However, according to Hersey, may have ultimately failed because that behavior, that success, is actually ineffective. Why? Because that employee can now only build those widgets if the leader is there to hold their hand throughout the whole process. So sure, in the short term, it was successful. They got the 10 widgets built that day. In the long run, however, Hersey would say, your success was actually ineffective. And that's what I mean when I say you can fail even when you succeed. You can fail when you succeed if your success is ineffective in the long run. So that employee can only build 10 widgets if you're there to hold their hand. That's ineffective. A more effective use of your time and your influence would be to get that employee to get those 10 widgets built, but develop them in such a way that a few weeks from then, they're able to build those widgets without your involvement. So micromanaging can be appropriate. If that employee's brand new and they've never done it before, then sure, you might need to quote unquote micromanage them. In other words, teach them, hold their hand, get them up to speed. Then you can push them out the nest and eventually say, hey, buddy, go build those 10 widgets on your own. You don't need me anymore. You can do it on your own. Come check in with me if you need help, but you're ready. Go ahead. The true micromanager will never get to that point. The micromanager will just micromanage them forever because they think that's the only way to get the resultant behavior that they need. Therefore, even though they're succeeding, it's ineffective success. They are failing despite their success. Now, another situation you can run through this model is, some of my employees have not my employees, I'm sorry, my workshop participants have told me they hate when they have to tell an employee they got to work a Saturday shift. And I don't blame them. I wouldn't want to have to tell anyone that either. So we talked about that scenario. We looked at it through this model. Some leaders get focused on what's the resultant behavior. The resultant behavior is I need that employee to work Saturday. Okay. Now, if that's all I care about, I may have very little regard for how that employee feels about working Saturday. Maybe they got to miss their kid's birthday party or something like that. That sucks. That's heavy. That can make you hate your job. That can make you hate the company, right? So if that leader doesn't care about how the employee feels about working Saturday, then sure, perhaps as you can see on this model, they will succeed in the sense that they get that employee to work on Saturday. But if that employee works on Saturday and comes back to work on Monday, really hating the boss because they know that the boss is aware of the fact that they had to miss their kid's birthday party, but no one has said anything. No one has said, hey, we really appreciate it. I know how awful it can be to miss your kid's stuff. I've had to miss stuff at home too. It's the worst. I'm sorry it happened. I appreciate your commitment to us. Thank you for being here Saturday. Whatever it's going to be, just care. Just show them that you care. But some bosses, all they care about is that result. And that's what I would say is ineffective success. That's how you can fail when you succeed. Sure, you got that employee to work on Saturday, but you also now have a disgruntled employee who may be more likely to try to leave your department, who may be more likely to try to leave your organization. And this is what happens a lot of the time. You've got managers who are getting the short-term results. They are getting the person to build the 10 widgets. They are getting the person to work on Saturday, but they are not generating commitment from that employee. Therefore, their success is actually ineffective because let's say you're worried about getting 10 widgets out the door that day. All right. Or you're just worried about getting the employee to work on Saturday. Well, that's short term, right? Let's say long term, your company is also saying, hey, we want to reduce our turnover rate. We want people staying with us. We want people here for 5 to 10 years instead of the 1 to 2 years that we're averaging now. Well, if that's the case, then that's a longer term desired result. The leader who's micromanaging or the leader who's a total ogre about telling people to work on Saturday, sure, they may be achieving short-term results. It's short-term success. But in the long run, on this model, they are headed towards ineffective territory, not effective territory, because in achieving short-term success the way that they are, by being an uncaring ogre about it, they are hurting the likelihood that that employee will want to stay with that company for 5 years. And believe me, folks, I hear from a lot of people, turnover can be a problem. And it's not just turnover as in leaving the company. What I have found is that many times, even in great companies, there will be managers who are getting results. So on paper, it is hard for the company to say, is this manager ineffective? Are they really doing the best job they can? It's hard to say that they aren't doing the best job they can when they're getting results. But if you take that longer term look at it, you may say, oh, this is why this manager keeps getting results, but nobody wants to stay in their department. This is why it's a revolving door, because they haven't looked at this model and they haven't determined, oh, I could achieve success in a much more effective way. I could get that employee to build 10 widgets. I could get that employee to come in on Saturday. But if I used a different means of influence, a different leadership style, I could get those short-term results and be effective in the long run because I'm getting commitment from that employee. I'm increasing the likelihood that they're going to want to stay in my department or they're going to want to stay with this organization. So I hope that makes sense for you. God, it better make sense. What the hell? Why are we even doing any of this if that didn't make sense? If it didn't make sense to you, I apologize. That's totally my fault. I'm sure it did, though. The point is just keep in mind there's a lot of pressure for short-term results. And I get it. I totally get it. When there's that pressure, it's easy to take the path towards ineffective success of just get the result no matter how you have to do it. But when you approach leadership and management that way, you're going to get those short-term results, but you're going to have a revolving door out of your department or a revolving door out of your organization. Or if you're getting those results by micromanaging, then guess what? You're never going to be able to take a day off the rest of your life. Okay. And if you get hit by a bus on the way to work tomorrow, your department is screwed because you're not there to hold their hands and micromanage them. So sure, you've been getting short-term results. You've been technically succeeding, but you haven't been doing so effectively. You've been doing so ineffectively. And that is how leaders fail even when they succeed. So your homework for this week from Better Workdays is to just take a look at this model and consider every time you achieve results, every time you get the resultant behavior out of an employee that you're looking to get, just ask yourselves, did I do that the most effective way possible? Or did I do it in an ineffective way? And if you think you did it in an ineffective way, then make those adjustments. How can you change your influence style, your means of influence, so that your employees' resultant behavior is not only successful, but effective as well? I want you to just think about that this week. And thinking about it may sound passive, right? Believe me, if more bosses and managers just thought about this stuff, there'd be a lot more great managers and bosses and leaders out there. Because when you think about it and you reflect on it, it will affect your behavior. You just have to start with the thinking and the reflecting. It's got to start with you. So ask yourself, was that successful? Yes. Was it successful and effective? Yes. Was it successful and effective? No? Well, then you got to go back to the drawing board. And, this works with kids, works with employees. I mean, in the kids' context, it might be you need to influence your kid to clean their bedroom. So let's say you do what I'll admit to doing this. You kind of just get frustrated and yell at the kid, go clean your room. All right. They go clean it. I achieved success. That room's clean. Was it effective or ineffective? Perhaps it would be more effective if I worked with my kids to regularly clean their room for 10 minutes a week, rather than me yelling at them and getting them to clean it once a month for an hour. You see what I'm saying? Can you get the kid to value a clean room, and in valuing it, put the work into keeping it clean? I would say that would be a more effective way to achieve success when it comes to getting your kid to clean their room. If you're screaming at them and getting them to clean it just because they want you to stop screaming at them, then sure, you achieve short-term success. But much like the micromanager, now anytime you want that behavior from the kid, you got to scream at them, right? So always be thinking about, is this success effective? Is it serving both the short-term needs and the long-term needs of the organization? All right. If you don't consider that, then I hate to say it, you're going to fail even when you succeed as a manager. So always have the short-term and the long-term in mind, and make sure you're not just succeeding, but you're succeeding effectively. I'll see you next week on Better Workdays.